Juvenile Justice. And I would like to welcome you all to today's legislative briefing. Over the next hour or so, we'll be discussing House Bill 1826 and Senate Bill 920, an act to promote public safety and better outcomes for young adults. These bills are currently being considered by the Judiciary Committee and represent a bold policy to reform and reimagine juvenile justice in a way that advances the developmentally appropriate treatment of young people while reducing recidivism, improving public safety, and increasing racial equity in our justice system. We will first hear opening remarks from the distinguished legislative champions of these bills, and then we will hear from a group of accomplished professionals with deep experience in this subject area. First, let's do some housekeeping. We're going to have people who aren't presenting muted in order to avoid background noise. We're going to ask you all to please hold your questions until the end of the presentations and to avoid using the chat to submit questions during the presentation. We've dedicated a portion of today's briefing for Q&A. We've also invited members of the press today, so portions of this discussion may be quoted in the media. So with that being said, and without further delay, I will turn it over to Leader Jim O'Day, who will kick off today's event.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, generally my parents always told me I had a face suited for radio, but I am going to go video here today. I'm really happy to look at all of the people that are on this call this afternoon on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. So truly encouraging to me as one of the key sponsors or lead sponsors on this bill to see so many people wanting to be involved, to have conversation about this very important piece of legislation. I can't go on for more than a second then to really tip my hat to my co-sponsor, Chairwoman Khan, who you all know has been an incredible champion for so many issues, relevant to families and children and youth and young people. And to have her on this bill with me is really tremendous, and I'm happy to see her on here today. And I knew that she'd be here, but obviously it's an honor to be here. I see some young people on the call, and let's face it, that's what this bill is all about. And that really, for the majority of my career as a social worker with the Department of Social Services for 24 years before coming to the legislature, was really my focus, making sure that young people got the kinds of services that they required and needed, and certainly their families. And really, when I first got involved with this bill, I had to put myself in a position, thinking about my own kids and, when they might have been 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years of age, and maybe coming involved with the judiciary or with the law enforcement. Do I really think, and they're pretty sharp kids, and I really think they had the wherewithal to go forward in that arena without some sort of adult intervention? And the answer to me was no. And so thinking about all these other children and all of our other adolescents in the Commonwealth, who may, for one reason or another, find himself making one bad decision and then not having as much support as I feel that they need in these ages. That's primarily what really motivated me to become involved with this bill. I've been on this bill almost, I think, since the first day it was filed by Rep. Khan. And really, was very happy back 6 or 7 years ago when we were able to raise the age to 17. This to me is a very logical extension of that earlier work. So I'm happy to be here. I'm really thrilled to see so many young people on this call. a number of my colleagues on this call, and happy as we get deeper into this today to answer any questions folks might have. And now it's my real honor to be able to introduce one of my favorite colleagues here in the State House, Chairwoman Kay Khan. Thank you all very much.
Jim O'Day, Representative O'Day, thank you so much for those really kind words. It's been a great honor and a pleasure to work with you always, all the way. I don't remember when you came in. I've probably been here a bit longer, but I tell you, there's no one better than Representative O'Day. He's a great champion for all the work that we need to be doing. And I'm just so honored to be here this afternoon and really want to thank all of you who put this panel together. It's a great opportunity to talk about raise the age. And also, like Jim, I have 3 children of my own. I also have 7 grandchildren. And so one always worries and hopes that they'll be able to get through adolescence without getting into trouble. And so I'm just happy to be here to have this opportunity this afternoon. So I'm just going to say that I'm State Representative Kay Khan. And again, I'm just grateful to be here. And I know that we are also working with Senator Crichton. I don't know if he's here this afternoon, but I hope that between the 3 of us and all of you on the Zoom today, will really get to work and make sure that we can try to get this bill out of the committee. We've been given an extension until April 15th. And so it gives us a little bit of time to really work hard and make the case. So I'm pleased that we could have this opportunity today, and really want to thank Citizens for Juvenile Justice for pulling this all together. And so I'll just say a few words. I'm now serving my 13th term in the House of Representatives, and I've been working on criminal justice reform issues since I began my career in the legislature. And I'm particularly proud, as Jim also mentioned, that back in 2013, we were able to raise the age at that point, and we went as far as the 18th birthday. So anybody under 18th birthday, we were able to get to that point. And at the same time, at that time, actually, the federal government was looking to raise the age as well, so that adolescents in lockup are not within sight or sound of an older criminally involved population. So thankfully, I was able to successfully move my bill at the time forward. And Massachusetts became one of the first states to raise the age to the 18th birthday. And it wasn't easy. We worked through several sessions to get to that point. But while I was the House Chair of the Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities for 12 years, I had an opportunity to work closely with the Department of Youth Services. And I visited several of their lockup facilities on several occasions. I was honored also to travel to Berlin with a group of legislators and leaders to witness how juveniles and adolescents were managed in the juvenile system in Germany. I'm also a mental health professional, having worked with seriously impaired inpatient adolescents prior to my coming into the legislature. I saw positives in both the systems here in Massachusetts and what we were able to see in Germany. And older teens, while being held accountable for their actions, following the rules, working hard to complete educational requirements, to at least earn a GED, a high school diploma, or earn a certificate for future job possibilities, and the ability to connect and work with their families. It was just a wonderful way to show that evidence indicates that recidivism rates are reduced. And so we know that many of these, the ability to do all of this, to get the educational piece, to get counseling, to connect with families really does make a difference. And as I said, we were able to raise the age of Massachusetts to 18th birthday, but that was 8 years ago. So it's now time to go to 19th birthday or even 20th birthday. And we know that, adolescents are still in high school and higher. I see Judge Blitzman's saying even higher. I'm happy with higher, but I think if we can get to 19th birthday or 20th birthday, science has told us that this is really something we should be doing. And these adolescents are still in high school. And here's an opportunity really to change behavior before it's too late. So the bills currently sit before the Joint Committee on the Judiciary. It did have a public hearing, but that was back in October. And at the moment, the bills have received, as I said earlier, somebody said earlier, an extension order to April 15th. So last session, the bills went into a study. So really, I'm urging everyone on this call, both legislators and those of you in the community and working for other organizations, to contact your own legislators. You all have a legislator, both a senator and a House member, and ask them to urge the Judiciary Committee to pass these bills out with the favorable, so that we can move along before the session ends. And the session, the more formal part of the session will end on July 31st. So we don't have a lot of time. And so again, I'm just hoping you'll all reach out to your own legislators, and if you're members of organizations, get your membership involved as well. And I'm hoping that we can move this forward. But so thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to say a few words this afternoon. And again, I'm so delighted to be able to work on this with Representative O'Day and Senator Creighton, and happy to be here to answer questions as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you both, Rep. Khan and Leader O'Day, so much for your leadership on this very important issue. Senator Creighton is not on the call yet. Chair Creighton is the lead Senate champion for this bill. He's currently in caucus, but he will be joining us and sharing his remarks later on in the program. And just a quick bit of information for everyone before we move forward. If you'd like more information about the Raise the Age campaign, you can download handouts for this briefing at www.raisetheagema.org, and we will put the link in the chat for you to access those documents. And so with that, I am honored to introduce our first speaker of the afternoon, Tito Santos Silva. Tito serves as the executive director of Boston Uncornered, where he has worked for more than a decade supporting young people from underserved communities to help them reach their greatest potential. Prior to coming to Boston Uncornered, Mr. Santos Silva was the director of engagement for UTEC, where he was responsible for developing training and helping frontline staff. He's also worked for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Youth Services, supporting incarcerated young adults. Mr. Santos Silva earned a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and a Master of Arts in Community Social Psychology from UMass Lowell. Raised in Brockton, his educational and professional journey was almost derailed by the same street violence that took the life of a close friend of his. But with the right support, he was able to get back on track. So without further ado, I present to you, Mr. Tito Santos Silva.
Thank you, Leon. Like you said, my name is Tito Santos Silva. I'm the executive director of Boston Uncornered. I've been doing this work for well over a decade, specifically trying to reach young men like myself who are struggling with some of the same barriers that I faced growing up in Brockton, and trying to help them find new opportunities. The truth is, it's very easy to just label them, to label us when we're young. If I look back over my life, at 16 years old, I lost my neighbor to gun violence. At 18, I lost my best friend. At 19, I was a victim of gun violence. And at 20, I was homeless. The decisions I was making during those times, despite the networks that I had and the supports that I had, were always negative. I struggled with trauma. I struggled with my own pain. I struggled with being a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. And I had oftentimes young people in similar situations encouraging me to the best of their ability. And during those times, if I'm being completely transparent right now, I did a lot of things that could have ended me up in jail or worse, dead. Luckily, and I say this with complete honesty, pure luck is the only reason why I was never arrested or incarcerated. And I didn't have a record that followed me to this day. And because of that, and because I got to a place where I had resources, and I had tough love, and I had accountability, but I had that little bit of grace where I didn't have to write it down every time I did something. I was able to go back to school to get 2 degrees. I participated in programs at Harvard and Tufts for leadership development. I'm an executive director. I was able to get jobs that allowed me the opportunity to pay for my children, which I had very young at 22 years old. And I was able to really readjust my alignment. But the truth is, that's not the story for most young people. We know that in this Commonwealth and in this world today, Black and brown young men are disproportionately impacted by the criminal justice system and are labeled. And those labels will follow you. If we think that's not true, I have a cousin right now that I was with this week. He's 42 years old and he still works 60 to 80 hours a week, working in warehouses, in factories, and at diners just to make ends meet. Because at 18, he broke the law. He hasn't been arrested since then. He hasn't been incarcerated since then. And he hasn't gotten in trouble with anyone since then. But 22 years later, he's still suffering the consequences of a decision that he made during a time in a community that didn't have resources, that didn't have support systems, and that didn't have positive networks for him. Now, if anyone else thinks that's fair, I challenge anyone on this call to think about their life at 18, 19, and 20, and to say that they would be okay with continuing to be labeled with the mistakes you made during those days. I know firsthand that I am grateful and I am privileged and I am honored to not have had those things follow me. And I know that it's the reason why I can be successful today. During those days, I had family members tell me that I would never amount to anything. I had family members tell me that they were preparing for my funeral and they were buying their dress for me because they knew I was going to be next on the list. Today, I stand as a contributor to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I stand as a consultant to many of the organizations on this call. I stand as somebody who contributes in a positive way. And what I'm saying is that the young people that are impacted by these laws can do this too. We all make mistakes. We all need to be held accountable, and we all need to have that ability to learn from those mistakes. But more importantly, we need grace. I challenge anybody in this call to look at themselves, to look at the decisions they made at 18, 19, and 20, and say that they would be comfortable with still being labeled that 20 years later, because I know I wouldn't be. I'm a different person today, and I promise you that these young people, given the opportunity, will be different too. Thank you for your time.
Tito, thank you so much for your heartfelt, personal, and powerful remarks that you shared with us here today. We now turn to Berkshire County District Attorney Andrea Harrington, the first woman elected to serve in that post. She took office in 2019 and delivers a reform agenda of vigorously prosecuting dangerous offenders while improving public safety through prevention and community engagement. Andrea has practiced in the area of criminal law for over 15 years. She graduated from the University of Washington and earned a JD from American University, Washington College of Law in 2003. Those studies inspired Andrea's work representing convicted death row inmates in their post-conviction appeals in South Florida. Andrea then returned home to raise her family in Berkshire County, where she grew up, representing defendants in appellate and trial matters, family law, and plaintiff side employment litigation. DA Harrington, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this very distinguished group. And I have to say, like Tito, your comments were so moving, and I really appreciate you sharing that with the group today. As the district attorney, my #1 priority is to protect and enhance public safety for my community. And people here in Berkshire County want to see a problem-solving approach to the big challenges that we face here in our county. And really, they've been so much further ahead of the game than our law enforcement leaders in terms of wanting to see high quality mental health care, substance use treatment for people across the board who are struggling here in Berkshire County. Raising the age of juvenile jurisdiction to include 18, 19, and 20-year-olds will make this community safer. And here in Berkshire County, the juvenile court is uniquely situated to provide evidence-based interventions that are targeted specifically at the needs of emerging adults who are at a critical time in their development. And we know that the current system is not serving our high-need young people. Emerging adults are overrepresented in the current criminal legal system. They have high recidivism rates. A 2013 study showed that while emerging adults comprise 10% of the population, they account for 29% of all arrests and 20% of the people who are sentenced to state prison and 23% of the people who are sent to our local houses of correction. The overrepresentation of emerging adults in the criminal legal system are compounded for people of color, which Tito so eloquently spoke about. Black males, for example, make up 40% of all young adults that are sent to state and federal prisons. And while young adults spend more time incarcerated at our local houses of correction than any other age group, they have the highest recidivism rates in the adult system. 79% are arraigned within 3 years of leaving a house of correction. So, people have talked about the brain science. Representative Khan talked about that. We know from the science that the young adult brain is still developing, and it presents policymakers with an opportunity to have lasting positive impacts on this age group that currently we are missing out on. This is the time for young adults to learn the skills that they will need throughout their lives to manage their mental health needs, to care for themselves and their families, and to contribute to their communities. And we've seen the positive impacts of this approach through programs like UTEC and BROCA that provide high quality evidence-based interventions for emerging adults. But those programs are not available in Berkshire County, and they're not available in other under-resourced communities across the Commonwealth, and we're all suffering for it. It's not realistic to expect Berkshire County to have an emerging adult court system given our population size. The caseloads have decreased significantly in our juvenile court. Judge Blitzman is going to talk more about that. But caseloads in our district court are up by 30% due to the shutdown of jury trials. And the juvenile court is well trained to address the needs of youth with developing brains. They can provide the kinds of interventions that 18, 19, and 20-year-olds need so that they can be on a healthier, more productive path to adulthood. And the laws and societal norms now treat people over 18 as full-fledged adults, but we know that the research says that the adolescent brain development, that in many ways, young adults are more like teenagers than they are like older adults. And the data shows that most young people age out of criminal activity by their late 20s. And with developmentally appropriate interventions and exposing teens and young adults to adult jails and prisons increases offending. And in the young adult stage of brain development, individuals are more attracted to high risk seeking behavior. And we know that people in this age group had a hard time regulating their emotions. And when they're surrounded by peers in stressful situations, this is exacerbated. We know that people in this age group resist authority, particularly when they review that authority as unfair or inconsistent. So keeping 18, 19, and 20-year-olds in the juvenile system, where they must attend school and participate in rehabilitative programming, will lower recidivism, and it will decrease crime overall and give us a safer and healthier community. In Massachusetts, when policymakers raised the age to keep 17-year-olds out of the adult system, juvenile crime has declined by more than 34%. So we have seen faster declines in violent and property crime rates than the national average. So this reform will have a significant impact on Berkshire County. We are struggling from the loss of stable middle-class manufacturing jobs, the long-term downturn in the economy. It's taken a toll on our young people. We have high rates of substance use disorder. We have high rates of fatal overdoses. And the problems with that have exacerbated these challenges for young people due to COVID, not having consistent schooling, not having access to opportunity is going to really increase the needs of this age group. And this is the time to provide them with the services that they need in juvenile court. Something that, I've heard as on the side of people who want to keep, 18, 19, 20-year-olds in the adult court system is they say that parents are not as involved because these are adult children. And I can tell you as a district attorney, that is just untrue. I hear from parents of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who have matters, their children have matters in district court or superior court, and they are very invested in their children's well-being. You don't stop being a parent at 18 years old. I meet with the parents of young people who have died from fatal overdoses. I've been to Learn to Cope. Those parents are desperate to find help and support for their adult children, and they're heartbroken and frustrated that they don't have the tools that they need to support their children. So I really foresee people in the juvenile court system. I foresee, the parents of adult children as being very desirous of being involved in the well-being of their young people. I want to talk about accountability. As a district attorney, accountability is critical. Raising the age will continue to hold young adults accountable for their actions while providing them a chance to undergo rehabilitation to fully develop their character. Serious crimes will continue to be eligible for adult sentences. Murder charges will still be tried in adult court, and prosecutors still have the option of seeking youthful offender indictments in offenses, giving a judge the power to impose a juvenile, adult, or combination sentence. Reducing the long-term costs associated with a lifetime of justice involvement is going to be a benefit to raising the age. And as Tito mentioned, having an adult criminal record bars people from opportunities for their entire lives. For young people, having a court proceeding will profoundly impacts their living situation, relationships, schooling, and future, all while their brains, decision-making skills, and judgments are still developing. I see this raise the age as a huge opportunity for Massachusetts to give us a strategic advantage by better providing for young people while they're at a critical stage in their development. And I see it as a huge advantage for public safety. So those are some of the reasons why I'm supporting Raise the Age, and I look forward to hearing your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DA Harrington, for sharing that important data and your valuable perspective from Berkshire County and from the DA's office. Our next speaker is the Honorable Judge Jay Blitzman. Judge Blitzman retired as the first justice of the Middlesex Division of the Massachusetts Juvenile Court in November 2019. Now he consults on juvenile and criminal justice issues, mentors new and experienced attorneys, and is serving as the interim executive director of Mass Advocates for Children. Prior to his judicial appointment, he was a founder and the first director of the Youth Advocacy Project in Roxbury, a community-based interdisciplinary public defender's office that I'm a proud alumnus of, which became the template for the creation of the statewide Youth Advocacy Division of the Committee for Public Counsel Services. He was a member of the American Bar Association Youth at Risk Commission, the Massachusetts Bar Association Juvenile and Child Welfare Section, the Boston Bar Association Deconstructing the Cradle to Prison Pipeline Steering Committee, and he chaired the Massachusetts Juvenile Court Best Dispositional and Sentencing Practices Committee. He still serves on the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court Standing Committee on Eyewitness Identification. Jay also teaches juvenile law at Northeastern University School of Law, a Cradle to Prison Pipeline course at Boston College, and a trial advocacy course at Harvard Law School. So this man truly needs no introduction, but I'd like to pass the microphone to the Honorable Judge Jay Blitzman.
Leon, thank you so much. I am truly energized and excited to be with you all. I am particularly excited to see my friends from ROCA, UTEC, More Than Words. It's your lived experiences that we're talking about and hoping to address this afternoon, as Tito's personal story attests. From multiple perspectives, the time to raise the age is now. I view this as a call to action. As Representative Khan said, we raised the age to 18 in 2013. And as D.A. Harrington commented, the sky did not fall. And if we raise the age now, as has Vermont raised the age, we will have a similar experience. In the time since we've raised the age to 18, we now have an overwhelmingly strong body of research, which demonstrates that from a public safety perspective, from a moral perspective, from an equity perspective, the time to raise the age is right now. As regards recidivism, criminal recidivism in the district court system is 55%, looking at reconviction. D.A. Harrington has noted that within 3 years, 76% of people who leave jails and prisons will be rearraigned. The Center on State Courts, analyzing Massachusetts recidivism data, has shown that the recidivism data in our rehabilitatively oriented DYS system, our juvenile court system with specialized court clinics, judges, and probation officers is approximately 22 to 25%. So from a public safety perspective, it seems almost, forgive me for speaking euphemistically, like a proverbial no-brainer. And the research is even more robust. National research from the CDC shows that adolescents who enter the criminal system have a 34% higher chance of being arrested later for felonies. As regards the issue of capacity, which has been addressed and is a recurring issue, 2020 court data shows that overall filings in the Massachusetts juvenile court are down approximately 38%. I do believe we have the capacity. One of the issues that's been raised about raising the age in juvenile court is people say, well, this is juvenile court, this is kiddie court. Nothing could be further from the truth. So let me disabuse you all of that misconception. The juvenile court judges now have the jurisdiction to hear all cases other than murder. District court judges cannot sentence to state prison. Juvenile court judges can in our youthful offender jurisdiction. Even in delinquency cases, juvenile court judges can hear every case other than murder cases. The sad reality means that when an adolescent is charged, for example, with an unarmed robbery, unless that case is reduced, broken down in the district court, that case must go to Superior Court, where an adolescent faces a state prison sentence. If we raise the age, as has Vermont, we will then dramatically cut off the unnecessary entry of so many adolescents, many of whom are duly involved in child welfare system. The juvenile court has jurisdiction of child welfare cases involving youth to reach the age of 20 to 22. So to understand these issues in a developmental, contextual context, they're better served in a more rehabilitative system, which quantitatively, better protects public safety. And there's another issue I want to raise, and that is those of you who are familiar with juvenile criminal justice know that the single biggest driver of detention and commitment are probation violations and parole violations. Well, guess what? When a youngster or an adolescent or a late teen is discharged from DYS, they're no longer on probation, they're no longer on parole. Virtually every person who leaves the adult system is on some form of probation and violations of probation. Often discharge from DYS means you were then free to go lead your life. If Vermont could do it, and not only can we do it, we should, from the research from organizations such as Center for Law, Brain, and Behavior, which has published a recent white paper on this very issue, looking at all the science that the age of peak offending is in the 18 to 19 year range. Why not address those young people in a much more rehabilitative setting, which will qualitatively reduce recidivism. The time to act is now. I really believe that we should now second Representative Khan's motion and act. I vote yes for raise the age.
Thank you so much, Judge Blitzman, just for your wisdom and your valuable perspective. We now turn to Lieutenant Serko Gurjaran of the Winthrop Police Department. The lieutenant began his career in 2010 as a patrol officer with the Winthrop Police Department. In 2016, he received the Outstanding Service and Contribution Award. In 2019, he was awarded the Department of Mental Health and Law Enforcement Award. The lieutenant is a founding member of the Community and Law Enforcement Assisted Recovery Program, or CLEAR, which is a network of community partners, the Winthrop Police Department, and the Winthrop Health Department that ensures that individuals seeking support for substance use disorders or mental health are connected to community-based service providers. He also serves as a police peer support officer, community outreach officer, and health and fitness officer, which in that role, he manages a shift of officers, reviews policies and procedures related to mental health, and supports a multidisciplinary mental health response team. Lieutenant, we're happy to have you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I am so grateful to be here with this esteemed group. Like Leon said, my name is Sarko Gurjaran. I work in public safety and health during the day, and I practice psychotherapy at night. The views I'm sharing today are my own. They do not necessarily represent the beliefs of the department I work for. My thinking has developed over years of study in psychology, counseling, philosophy, religion, and human development. I'd like to start by saying, everywhere I turn, I hear people say, show me the data. What does the science say? This is an ever-present line of questioning and reasoning that easily demonstrates a person's care about the truth. I agree with carefully navigating a topic guided by science. I agree with incremental change helping move toward a fairer and more just world. I don't agree with picking and choosing what data, research, and science we use. We are either using the best science to inform public policy and law, or we are not. There is a choice point here that requires ethical decision-making to ensure movement in the correct direction. Here's what we know. We know the human brain is plastic and ever-changing. We know it is a complex wonder of a biopsychosocial computational powerhouse that adapts to the world and has the power to change the very world itself. We know it remains malleable well into the 20s and beyond. We know that each young person develops in a unique trajectory at a distinct pace while passing through important developmental milestones. We know that children, adolescents, teens, and young adults are deeply influenced by their families, peers, and their environment. We know that they can change in the direction of becoming more of an asset or move towards more of a liability based on exposure and energetic interplay between the world and themselves. There is a reciprocal energetic interplay of multifactorial influences that continually go back and forth between them and the world. In some controlled environments, this can be curated with intention based on science for best outcomes. The Department of Youth Services comes to mind, doesn't it? These are not radical statements. There was a time when these statements would have been radical. There was a time when science thought the brain was not a dynamic changing part of the human body and the environment. We're past those days. The above statements are validated by science. If this is the case, we shouldn't we follow the science to inform the law? A young person is continually changing from the moment of conception and beyond. Change is constant. We are all changing. In fact, there are some philosophical traditions that say there is one truth, and that truth is change. Everything in perpetual change at all times. If nothing is static and everything is dynamic, always capable of change, then we come upon the next very important truth. Hope. Change is hope. Once we know this to be the case, a moral imperative is birthed. We should offer young people an opportunity to pay their debts to society in a rehabilitative rather than punitive environment to ensure that the law is used to establish opportunity and appropriate setting for the young person so that their mindset can change, thereby increasing the likelihood that they become the future asset they were always destined to be. Allowing our young people to work through consequences for their actions that hold them accountable, but offer opportunity to learn from mistakes while acquiring social emotional skills with a realistic opportunity to pass through a rite of passage from one version into a completely new, more adaptable version of themselves is not only smart, it is scientific and the moral thing to do. It is restorative. We know that a young person placed in a punitive environment surrounded by adults who are high in ACEs will be hardened. They will change. Is this the way we want them to change? Do we want their nervous system to sync with adult nervous systems that are high in ACEs? Isn't this the era of trauma-informed systems of care? It is. It is time to offer trauma-informed systems of justice for our young people. We are currently transitioning out of a time when people were painted with a scarlet letter for their entire lives if they committed a crime. Do we want to be a commonwealth that works to allow young people to pay their debt to society for their transgression while learning, training, changing, and culminating in a graduation, a rite of passage into a new person that has access to full reconnection and integration into our amazing system? Or do we not? Make no mistake about it. We have another choice point here. Decide using an ethical decision-making process. Decide like a family member's life depended on it, because it does. Decide using science to create justice systems that are imbued with ancient wisdom validated by science, which is restorative from the very first intercept point all the way to re-entry. And while you're at it, create as wide a door as possible for all young people who trigger entry through an appropriately decided upon transgression as outlined by law. If a young person breaks the law, shouldn't they be able to repay their debt to society in a well-curated environment, a setting that helps them change their mind and heart set while they move down the path towards becoming a future asset for themselves, their families, and their society? Doesn't this set the stage for a safer world for the young person and every other human that will interact with them in the future throughout their lives? It does. We are all undoubtedly part of a system that is directed by law. We have a chance here to offer access to more of our young people to rehabilitative trauma and science-informed justice systems that can assist by taking what science says is important and utilize it to not only offer the person a way to pay their debt back to society, but also learn the skills they need to not make similar mistakes in the future. We can also help with preventing the harmful impact of carrying the mark of a criminal record for an eternity. I leave you with this. What would you want to have happen if the young person at the doorway into the system happened to be you? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant. First, for your dedication and service to your community, but also for sharing your valuable perspective with us today. We now transition to Attorney Ducey Gonzalez, our next speaker. Attorney Gonzalez is the Deputy Chief Counsel of the Youth Advocacy Division, or YAD, of the Committee for Public Counsel Services. Prior to becoming director, Ducey was the attorney in charge of the YAD Quincy and Brockton office for over 10 years, where she supervised attorneys and social workers while maintaining her own caseload. Attorney Gonzalez started her career as a public defender with the then Youth Advocacy Project in Roxbury in 2005, where she represented juveniles in delinquency and youthful offender matters in the Dorchester, West Roxbury, and Boston juvenile courts. Attorney Gonzalez has also worked at Suffolk University School of Law's Juvenile Justice Center, supervising law students representing juveniles in the Boston Juvenile Court and assisting in teaching of a juvenile defender clinical class. Attorney Gonzalez, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leon. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of Raise the Age. Raising the Age promotes better outcomes for older adolescents, increases public safety, reduces the high cost of recidivism, and is doable for the juvenile courts and the juvenile defense bar. At this point, there is no question that a young adult's brain is still developing into their mid-20s. Older adolescents need to be in a system designed to promote their positive development. Treating older adolescents in a developmentally appropriate way brings about better legal and life outcomes, which means lower recidivism rates and safer communities. Prior to starting in this position as Deputy Chief Counsel in November, I represented children in delinquency and youthful offender proceedings in Massachusetts for over 16 years. During that time, I witnessed firsthand the drastically different outcomes young adolescents in the juvenile system received than those similarly aged and situated who were in the adult system. During my time, I represented a lot of young kids for offenses that occurred at school. These cases stick out in my mind because often I would have a 17-year-old client charged in a case along with an 18-year-old, often a fight at school. Both seniors set to go to the prom and graduate, but one in juvenile court with a developmentally appropriate resolution and treatment, while the other faced the House of Correction and all the collateral consequences associated with involvement in the adult system. For many young adolescents who are exposed to the adult system, this is where things start to unravel and the downward spiral starts. Massachusetts has set the standard for developmentally appropriate representation in juvenile court, which has an existing structure and capacity to manage this group of young adults. Our juvenile justice system is nationally recognized as a system that promotes positive development. Our system is designed to hold adolescents who have been adjudicated accountable while still providing individualized, developmentally appropriate programming for them. It is a system that has more experience and better results than the adult system in promoting pro-social development of young people. For adolescents aged 18 to 21, most cases are misdemeanors or lesser felonies. For these cases, the juvenile courts are particularly skilled at resolutions that are appropriate while connecting young people to opportunity, resources, and programming they need to successfully grow out of delinquent behavior. There is a misconception that with Raise the Age, there is a lack of accountability, which is incorrect. Our juvenile courts absolutely hold children accountable. This is about what court is best positioned to impose a disposition that promotes better life and public safety options. For those young people who have engaged in more serious criminal behavior, the youthful offender law provides a great deal of flexibility to individualize a response to the behavior. This law gives the district attorney the authority to evaluate the case and determine whether an indictment is appropriate. If a juvenile case is indicted, the courtroom is open to the public, and should the young person be adjudicated, the judge has the authority to use juvenile or adult sentence or a combination. For young adults who are committed to DYS, the Department of Youth Services, DYS is well equipped to work with this group as it already works with young adults up to age 21 for youthful offender matters. DYS employs a positive youth development approach, teaching young people the skills they will need for the rest of their lives. We know family engagement in juvenile court does not stop because a person turns 18 years old. The juvenile court encourages family participation, as do the lawyers, social workers, probation, and DYS workers. In my experience, families want to be engaged, and young people want their families and adult supports to be engaged. Young adult clients often rely on family members for support and advice. And in my experience, the juvenile court is more open and encouraging of this participation than the adult courts. It is also the case that many young adults are involved with the Department of Children and Families and need extra support during this difficult developmental period. We all know that racial and ethnic disparities persist in our legal system, but especially for young Black and Brown adolescents who are overrepresented in the houses of correction and state prisons. Raising the Age will allow us to continue to tackle these disparities and provide this group critical programming and opportunities offered in juvenile court. There has been some great work done by juvenile justice stakeholders, and as a result, juvenile court case numbers has dramatically dropped over the years. Not only does our juvenile defense bar have the expertise and capacity to handle more cases, bringing more cases into the juvenile court would help with the counsel crisis that is taking place in the adult system. CPCS has a specially trained juvenile defense bar ready and willing to take the cases if we raise the age. Raising the age allows us to break the cycle of reoffending and reincarcerating by using a developmentally appropriate approach. It allows us to hold young people accountable while using interventions within a rehabilitative model. Raising the age ensures our communities are safer and our young adolescents successfully transition to adulthood with positive supports and services. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Attorney Gonzalez. And I believe I speak on behalf of all of our attendees today in expressing our deep gratitude to all of today's speakers for sharing your personal experiences as well as your professional expertise on this important issue. We will now be opening it up to questions. We'll start by calling on legislators, legislative aides, and media representatives before opening questions to members of the general public. If you have a question, you may now type it into the chat or use the raise hand options under the participants tab and we will call on you. If your question is directed to a particular speaker, please include that in your question. For those of you who are on the phone, you can mute and unmute yourself by pressing *6 or raise your hand by pressing *9 on your phone. One last prompt before we get into questions. Another reminder, you can download the handouts for this briefing at the link that we are going to drop into the chat. And then one last piece, I'd like to turn it over quickly to Luis Pacheco and Christina LaFortune, who have a few questions that will kick off our Q&A session.
Hi, hello. So I'd like to start by saying thank you for this briefing. Myself and Louis are advocates from More Than Words, and we run a youth-led group called The Power Is Yours. We've been advocating for Raise the Age and meeting weekly with stakeholders and legislators. We've met with many of you here, actually. We've met with Senator Creighton, Rep. O'Day, and Rep. Khan, and are grateful for the leadership on this bill. We also recently met with Bucci and are grateful that she's ensuring young people's rights are protected. And Judge Blitzman helps train our staff and youth to know their rights. So thank you for that. We also met with DYS leadership and hope that you all will too. So you all have heard about the facts backing Raise the Age, and we as youth are constantly educating ourselves to fight for our place in this conversation, which, if we're being honest, we should not have to. So we'd like to read an op-ed that some of our group published about Raise the Age to make sure that we're centering the youth, the voices of young people in this conversation. So I'll pass it off to Louis.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone can hear me right. So yeah, we had an op-ed published in the Boston Herald. Some of the representatives and some of the people who we have met already know this. But yeah, I will just start reading it right now. Sorry. So raise the juvenile court age so young people can thrive. We are young adults who support legislation to raise the age of the juvenile court jurisdiction from age 18 to gradually include 20-year-olds. Though there is a wealth of evidence to support the change, the Massachusetts legislature is in danger of ending yet another session without passing the bill. This is not just politics for us, it's real life. We have seen how the criminal legal system traps many youth like Sorry, that kind of distracted me. We set and achieve goals for our education, careers, and lives while connected to a supportive environment that lets us learn and take on increasing responsibility. That is what young people need. And it is the opposite of what the adult criminal legal system offers. Nationally, nearly 80% of the prison population are people who were once in foster care, while some can continue to benefit from the Department of Children and Families Services after age 18. An adult conviction would generally bring those services to an end. Child welfare is supposed to prepare youth for the transition to adulthood. Instead, it is a pipeline of homeless in prison. The homeless in prison. If those young people wind up in trouble with the law, they should not be pushed into an adult system that makes the situation worse. We know that the brain is still developing until the age of 25, and that being around older offenders is not a healthy environment for young adults. In the juvenile system, there is an education requirement and programming to support a young person's development. Additionally, this move will ensure we don't saddle youth with an adult record that will stand in the way of future jobs and housing. This will reduce recidivism and make the community safer. When we say that young people need time to reach maturity, many do not get it. Many do get it. On college campuses or within the protection of well-resourced family. But people who grow up in the foster care system or simply without resources may not be so lucky. Instead, a disproportionate number end up in jail. Keeping the age of the juvenile justice system at 18 perpetuates racial inequality. Only 25% of Massachusetts youth in this age group are Black or Latinx, but 70% of people in this group who are incarcerated in state prisons and 57% of youth incarcerated in county jails are people of color. Raising the age would be a blow to systemic racism, something nearly all legislators say they want to dismantle. As we said, this is not about politics for us. It's about life. We're all on track to lead lives that fulfill us and serve our communities. These lives are triumphs over poor access to mental health care, language barriers, racism, poverty, and more. We are the people prisons are built for, not because of anything we might do, but simply because of who we are. In our stories and the stories of our families, it is clear how adult convictions disrupt lives. We have also seen how much growth, development, and accomplishment can happen after a person's 18th birthday. We think that should count for something. Under the current system, we don't get these opportunities to accomplish our goals. In our roles as advocates, we often speak with policymakers who praise us for sharing our stories and advocating for these policies. This is nice. However, actions speak louder than words. That would be more powerful. What will be more powerful is acting now to raise the age. We need to decriminalize young adult development in our communities and to make the success that we have achieved far more common. And yeah. Amelia Flores Terran, Jacob Robertson, and Luis Pacheco are members of the Power is Yours team. I'm more than words. That's it. And I'm sorry, I was just looking at the screen the whole time. I just had to read it. But thank you for allowing us to be here and share our voices. And for those of you who support the bill, thank you so much. And yeah, have a great one.
No apologies necessary, and thank you, Christina and Luis, both for your words and sharing that with us. And again, reminding us that it is imperative that we center the voices of young people in all of these conversations. So with that, I want to pivot to our audience. First, again, legislators, legislative aides, members of the media, do you have any questions for our panel today?
I don't have a question. I have a comment, actually.
Go ahead, Jovi.
Good morning, guys. My name is Jovan. I go by Jovi. I want to share that as a young adult at UTEC, having multiple opportunities to improve your life is beneficial because you never get turned away I have been in and out of the system multiple times, same as I have with UTEC, and having a place to come to that you know that you are on the right path regardless of your past or present has changed my life. When I think about raising the age, I think about mental health and the impact that a legislation like this one can have on young men come from similar backgrounds to mine. As a young man, nothing that we face coming from where I come from is easy, especially getting incarcerated at 18 into Billerica House of Corrections and being gang affiliated is not easy. So I have to quickly adapt to my environment and be on point 24/7. When being tried as an adult, you have to actually live with another grown man in your cell rather than being incarcerated at DYS and having your own single cell, having way more freedom, better food, and actually be with your own age group. In county, you're locked up with murderers, rapists, all types of bad people. So that alone plays a big part in your mental health. That's why I'm here today in support of ending the automatic prosecution of 18 to 20-year-olds as an adult. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jovi, for being here and for sharing, again, to sharing your powerful personal story. We greatly appreciate it. Are there any other questions? We'll open it up to any of the attendees. Any questions from anyone?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I just wanted to thank Jovi and Louis and his team at More Than Words just for sharing their stories and sharing their experiences. And, you know, I hope that our representatives hear us, and I hope collectively we can push this legislation forward and get it passed on behalf of so many young adults that need it. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Well said. We are now 4 minutes past the end of our time. So with that, I will just, again, thanks so much to just our powerful and esteemed panel, Attorney Gonzalez, Lieutenant Jajarin, Judge Blissman, DA Harrington, and Mr. Santos Silva for your insights and just sharing the wealth of information and perspective that you did with us today. And a special thanks again to Leader O'Day, Senator Crichton, and Rep. Khan for your leadership in truly being the champions on this legislation. You are greatly appreciated. And thank you to all of you just for attending to hear these perspectives and to learn more. We appreciate you coming in. Lastly, if you have a question that hasn't been answered, we will get back to you or reach out to any of the legislative sponsors, or you can reach out to us at Citizens for Juvenile Justice, cfjj@cfjj.org. And we're happy to respond to any questions that you may have that you didn't get to ask today. A few of us will be able to stay on a little bit longer if you all think of anything or have any questions. But with that, I'll thank you again for your time, and I wish you all a good day.